Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 336. It's a big theme in my life, learning about myself and being a better person. I'm a work in progress. I have revelations every day. Rick Rubin.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my Indie Film Hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by ShotLister. Paper shot lists suck, and when something inevitably goes wrong on set, you're left to scribble all over your perfect plan. But with ShotLister, you can schedule your film shot by shot and minute by minute. Then on set, just update your shot list and ShotLister automatically does the math so you know exactly what you're doing. Check out shotlister.com, which is available on macOS, iOS, and Android. And as a special bonus, ShotLister is giving away 50 free downloads every month. Just email indiefilmhustle@shotlister.com for your free copy. The show is also sponsored by my new book, Rise of the Filmtrepreneur: How to Turn Your Independent Film into a Money-Making Business. In it, I discuss how to actually create the filmtrepreneur model and how to make money with your film or films and do it again and again so you can actually build a successful career and business. So if you want to pre-order the book, head over to filmbizbook.com. That's filmbizbook.com. And if you haven't already, please sign up for my new podcast, the Filmtrepreneur Podcast. Just head over to filmtrepreneur.com or filmmakingbusiness.com is a quick little hack to get there. And there where you'll get a ton of new information about how to become a filmtrepreneur, how to become an entrepreneurial filmmaker and make a living with your films. So definitely check that out. Now, guys, today is a special episode because I'm going to talk about something that I have never publicly talked about. And it's something that I've been asked a bunch of times in the course of my career, but I've always been kind of cagey about it and just never thought of it as anybody's business. But I really thought that this information needed to get out there. And you guys know me to be very honest and straightforward and transparent with you guys. And today we're going to talk about personal branding and how to personal brand yourself as a filmmaker, as a businessman, as a filmtrepreneur, and all of the above. And the one thing that I have been asked a ton in my entire career is my last name. People always ask me about Ferrari. Alex, where did you get that name? Like, how is that possible? You're a Cuban guy from South Florida. How do you have a last name Ferrari? And I'm going to say it now. I've never said this story publicly before, but I legally changed my name when I was 18 years old. On, I think, close to my 18th birthday, I went down to the courthouse and changed my last name to Ferrari. Now, my original last name is very similar to Ferrari, just a little bit different. But Ferrari was a name that was always in my head, rattling around. And instinctively, I knew that having a name like Ferrari would make me stand out of the crowd. And I didn't want to, have a stage name or something like that because I was 18 years old. There's no reason to have a stage name, for God's sakes. But I knew instinctively that I wanted something to make me pop, especially when you were looking at a ton of resumes or you were looking at a reel. That last name would stick out and people would remember you. And that's exactly why I did it. I originally was thinking about marketing. I was thinking about branding. And the name Ferrari, which again was similar to my original last name, but I just thought it would make me stand out. And guess what, guys? It did. I've gotten so much work over the years purely because of name recognition, because it made me stand out. This is an extreme case of branding and personal branding. I am not suggesting that you go out and legally change your name to a cool last name or something like that. Don't go out and call yourselves Porsche or Lamborghini. God, I've heard that joke too many times in my life. But it was just something that made sense for me. And I was very, very happy that I've done it. I've never looked back. I've been a Ferrari much longer than I was my original last name. And by the way, my parents were not happy at all about me changing my name. You know, my dad, my mom, they were very, very, very upset about it. But I'm the kind of guy that just, plays by my own rules, if you will, and just dance to my own beat. And it was just something that made sense to me. And it was something that, rang true to me. That I'm like, oh, this is supposed to be my name. I have to be this name. And it has been, again, I can't tell you how much work I've gotten because of that name change. It has been, even when I was PAing and I was, starting up and coming up in the business. I mean, I remember being on set as a PA or an intern and people would just call me, hey, Ferrari, go over here, Ferrari over this, Ferrari over that. And it was such a powerful thing for me. And I'm telling you this story because I want to talk about personal branding in this episode. And no better way to do it than to talk about my own personal branding and how I was able to brand myself as a filmmaker and now as a host and a podcaster and an author and a director and all the other things that I do. That name has really helped me out a lot. And oddly enough, Ferrari is not a name that's associated with the film industry in the least. It's associated with a car, and a very famous and very high-end car. So again, that association does help. I didn't call myself the Nova or the Pinto. Alex Pinto probably wouldn't have worked as well as Alex Ferrari. But again, it was just a name that I had been thinking about and dreaming about, honestly, for years prior to me making that decision. And it was a very, very serious decision to change your name legally. And I had to go through a lot of hoops to do so. But I did. Now let's look at personal branding. What is the definition of personal branding? Personal branding is the practice of marketing yourself or your career as a brand. And that is so important in today's world. In the world of social media, in the world of getting jobs, people are always looking at your personal brand. So let me give you an example of a personal brand. If you have a Facebook account, a Twitter account, Instagram account, and you're a new, you're an up and coming filmmaker who's trying to get a job as an editor somewhere, people are going to do checks on you and they're going to look at what you're posting, how you're posting, and whatever you're posting out there, whatever you're putting out into the world that's associated with you and your name, people are going to associate with it. So if you're out there on your Facebook page and you're drinking and having parties and acting a fool and doing foolish things, chances are when a potential employer or client looks you up and sees what you've been doing, they're probably not going to give you the job. So you have to think about these things when you post stuff, when you express yourself on social media, in your website, things like that, whatever that brand might be. Your brand might be the crazy guy who goes around, shooting, scare videos or whatever that is. That might be a brand that, people have made millions of dollars on YouTube doing that. You just have to, I want you in this episode to kind of sit down and think about, what is my personal brand? What do I want to associate myself with? And what is the end game of my personal brand? And it doesn't mean that you have to have a podcast. It doesn't mean that you're going to be, a huge brand that's going to be worth millions of dollars. No, it could be as micro as, how am I going to present myself to the world to get a job, to build a business, to get clients, to get that internship? How do you want to present yourself? By building that website, by putting out your social media, you have to think about these things. I took it to an extreme with, changing my name legally to Alex Ferrari. And by that association, that name alone brought images of high-end quality, power, speed, all sorts of things based on the association of the term Ferrari, which is based on, of course, the Ferrari Motor Company. And I started to leverage that image over the course of my career. People would, on a subconscious level, associate my name with that. And then when they would look me up on either social media, back then it would be like MySpace or something like that. But whenever they looked up at social media or they went to my website, I would project a very polished, very professional, slick looking image. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. On my website, on the website's design, on the clients that I've worked with, all of that kind of stuff. These are things you need to think about when you're putting out a personal brand. Now, one other thing I'm going to talk about your personal brand is how you can leverage other brands to help build your own brand. So I've told this story, I think, once before, but I'll tell it again. When I came out to LA for the first time years ago, when I got here over a decade ago, I was offered a job to color grade a music video for no money. They're like, look, man, we have no money, but Snoop Dogg is in it's a music video. It's a music video for Snoop Dogg. And I was like, yes, I'll do it. And it cost me a day and a half of my time, but then I was able to put Snoop Dogg front and center on my company's website, on my own personal website as well. Like, hey, I've worked with this caliber of artist. And because of that association, automatically I started getting bigger jobs, getting more money, all of these things because I did one free job. And I was leveraging Snoop Dogg's credibility, Snoop Dogg's fame, and all those kind of things. And you could do the same thing as an editor. I did it early on in my career with my spec demo reel, where I leveraged a bunch of highly produced footage that I edited together to make fake commercials, and I would slap a Nike logo at the end of it, and I would put it up as my work. I did the work, but I didn't actually work for Nike. But it was called a spec reel. And when people asked, I always told the truth. But when they didn't ask, I just let them assume. That's what you did when you started out, You fake it till you make it. I had a whole episode on how to fake it till you make it. But that is also branding. So those associations helped my personal brand as an editor coming up in the Miami editing market back in the 90s because of the association I was able to do. And there was nobody else doing that back then. So I was able to stand out. So not only my name, but also the association of the projects I was able to create and put out helped my brand. So if you have a Facebook account, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter accounts, or any other social media accounts, LinkedIn, and so on, by posting these projects with these higher end people that you're able to get, sometimes for free, sometimes paid gigs, when you're starting out, that association really builds your personal brand or your company's brand, your production company's brand, your post-production company's brand, whatever that brand might be. So again, this episode's about you thinking. I want you to start thinking about who you are as a personal brand. And if you think for a second that it doesn't matter, you're wrong. I'm sorry to tell you that you are wrong. In today's world, and in the world that we're walking into over the next 10 or 15 years, how much do you think your personal brand is going to matter about getting a job? How much do you think that personal brand is going to matter when you're trying to court a new client for your production company or trying to get a new gig? It's going to mean a lot, guys. It's going to mean a tremendous amount. So if you start building that personal brand now, building that company brand now, that is going to be so valuable to you. And the people who aren't doing it are going to be left behind. And I know a lot of people listening right now go like, Alex, well, listen, I have a production company, or I have a company that I build their branding. I brand the company. I don't want to brand myself. On a micro level, you need to brand yourself as something of quality, of the kind of projects you do. If you're a creative, you got to brand yourself. If you're behind the scenes, you're branding yourself just based on the kind of projects you're working on. I know people who worked, and I did this early on, is you would start doing work on any low budget thing that came your way. And at the beginning, you have to do that. But at a certain point, you need to shift that. If you don't, you're going to be working on those kinds of projects for the rest of your life. So you essentially have to shift that personal brand. You got to shift the branding and the association where like, oh, this guy, he doesn't do movies for $1,000 to color grade an entire movie. He's going to be paid $10,000 or $15,000, if not $30,000 or $40,000 to color grade a movie, if not even more, depending on how much of a prestigious brand you are building. I want you to just think about it, guys. Think about your branding. Think about your company's branding. Think about your own branding, and also think about your movie and projects branding and how those projects that you're working on or building, how they affect your brand. So if all of a sudden I start directing porn for no apparent reason, and I'm like, hey guys, I'm really into porn right now, that's probably going to change my brand. Does that make sense? I'm going to start being known as, oh, Alex Ferrari, yeah, he's a porn director now. That's what he does. He used to direct movies and independent films, but for whatever reason, he's doing porn now. That's going to change my personal brand completely. Am I right? Ask yourself the question. If I started changing and started doing those kind of movies, that's the kind of brand I'm building. I'm going to talk about an amazing horror director by the name of Wes Craven. Now, Wes, if you don't know who Wes is and his work, he was the one that came up with Nightmare on Elm Street, Hills Have Two Eyes, Hills Have Two Eyes, and A House Around the Corner, the Scream franchise, all of these amazing films that were all horror. And when he originally got into the business, he didn't particularly want to do horror movies. He just kind of fell into doing horror movies. And for the rest of his career, he tried to break out of that branding, that personal brand. People just knew him as the horror guy. And he never was able to break out of that. He tried once. I think he leveraged the sequel to Scream. He's like, if you want me to do the sequel of Scream, you got to give me Music of the Heart, which was a movie with Meryl Streep and Gloria Estefan about violins in a school system. And it was a beautiful movie. But people just didn't care because Wes is not known for that. It's hard to break through that branding, and he didn't think about that when he was coming up. So he was kind of stuck in that branding for the rest of his life. Unlike the Coen brothers, whose first film was this dark, gritty, blood simple, this like a film noir / slacker film it was like a weird combobulation of stuff. And that was their first film. And people were like, oh, that's the kind of filmmakers they are. Well, they threw everybody on the top of their head when their second film came out was Raising Arizona. So now the Coen brothers brand is that they can do whatever the heck they want. They could do a serious drama. They can do comedy. They can jump back and forth. They could combine the two, whatever. It doesn't matter because that's the brand that they were able to create for themselves. So think about those kind of that kind of branding for you in your career. So I hope this episode helped you guys just begin to think about personal branding, company branding, just branding in general for yourself, for your companies, for your films, because it is so, so, so important. And where we are going with all the social media, with all the access and the lack of privacy that we're going to be going into and are already in, becoming a personal brand and building a personal brand. Whatever your values are, whatever kind of projects you want to work on, whatever kind of stories you want to tell, you better start thinking about it and branding yourself. And guys, if you don't have a personal website, for God's sakes, go get a personal website. You got to build a personal website for yourself. Even if you're just a first AD, just if you're a PA, start it up. Get your URL for your name and build a website and just tell people what you're doing. It's invaluable, guys. So I hope this helped you out a lot. If you want a link to a couple of books on personal branding, I'm going to put them in the show notes at indiefilmhustle.com/336. And guys, next week, I'm going to be doing an announcement, a large announcement, that announcement I've been talking about for a while. Again, it's not as big as Filmtrepreneur, but it is fairly big. It's something I've never done before for the tribe. So keep an ear out and watch social media and all sorts of stuff. I'm going to be announcing something fairly large next week, so check it out. Oh, by the way, also on August 16th, I'm going to be speaking with my brother from another mother, RB, from Stage 32 at the Holly Shorts Film Festival at 6 p.m. I'm going to put links to getting tickets in the show notes. And I'm also possibly going to be doing a whole other section or another talk on Filmtrepreneur, on how to become a entrepreneurial filmmaker, also at Holly Shorts, but we haven't set up the date yet, so we're hopefully getting that done as soon as possible. So thanks again for listening, guys. I really hope this episode helps you out and makes you start thinking about your own personal brand. As always, keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.